Alrighty, season previews roll on, and it is now my pleasure to welcome once again to the Empty Betters podcast, one of the faces of Hockey Collective, Mr. Nick Bowens, to talk about his beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. What's going on, dude?
Not much, man. Busy summer. Happy that we're almost back to hockey season here. Love the jersey on you, Harry. We got to get you one of those.
I've got one of the St. Pat's ones. It's in the closet in the other room. That's I always get good compliments on that one.
Yeah, didn't want to bring it out for this occasion, but that's okay. We'll save it for the cup run.
There you go. I got
There
to
we go.
scratch the A off and get the C on there.
There you go.
So, before we even talk about off season or anything, just from the hip, what is the temperature check going into this year for this team?
Honestly, I think it was very disappointing after the playoffs. I think there was then some excitement when Tree Living all but came out and said there will be some change. We now know that this isn't working, and I think the fan base kind of went, "Thank you. That's what we've been saying for 5 years. Let's do something about it." And now here we are, some 2.5 months later, and what has changed? One letter, gentlemen. So I think there's a bit of panic in Leafland right now. I think everybody's in agreement that there's some glaring holes in the offense on the left side in particular. Secondary scoring is a bit of a concern. The goaltending, some people think, is a concern. I'm not as worried about it as others, but it's definitely cautious optimism this year. We'll say that.
So, on the note of goaltending, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, you're in the camp that Wall's your guy and you're good to go.
I love Joseph Wall. Always have, always will. I know guys that have worked with him since he was 16, tearing it up on the US circuit. Like, I have a lot of faith in him. I've always been told that is the perfect mindset for a goalie. He will be a good NHL goaltender. Am I convinced he is a 1A goalie in 2024, 2025? No. I think the most games he's ever played in a season in his life was 37 in college at BC. After that, it was 32 as a rookie with the Toronto Marlies in, I believe, 2019, 2020. He has not eclipsed that number of games in a single season since. So the injury questions are there, the durability and longevity questions are there. Was he phenomenal last year? Absolutely. I wish he got more games in the series against Boston. But boys, I don't know if he's up for a full 1A workload this year. And I think that's why they brought in Stolarz, right?
Yeah, that's got to help balance the load a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, Stolarz is a good goalie. I really liked him in I liked him in London. Obviously, it's easier to win in London compared to some other junior teams. But I honestly always thought he was good and didn't quite meet his potential in Anaheim. I was glad he got the opportunity he did in Florida, and I like that stability. He's a big guy. He's an athletic guy. I think it'll bring a good inner competition for Wool, and we'll see if one of them kind of takes the reins here.
Big change behind the bench this offseason, obviously. Berube comes in. What are your thoughts going into this season with him behind the bench?
I really like Craig Berube, but I will also say that I really like Sheldon Keefe. I think Sheldon Keefe got a bad rap for star players that didn't perform when the lights were the brightest. Sheldon Keefe has won at every single level he has coached at, from the OHL to junior before that to the OHL to AHL, and he has the best record, I believe, ever in Toronto Maple Leafs history. He is one of the winningest percentages in NHL history, period. One of the quickest to, I believe it was 300 wins in NHL history as well. Sheldon Keefe is a damn good coach. Putting the blame on him for the past couple of seasons wouldn't be doing what he brought to the team justice. With that being said, I think everybody's excited about Berube. It's a different brand of hockey that he's going to bring to the team, one that I don't know if the roster is fully constructed towards yet. But when it comes to Toronto fans, you guys know they like the old school hockey. They like the rough and tumble hockey. They loved Ryan Reeves, even though that contract's an albatross. Ty Domi and Darcy Tucker are the two most famous guys in the city because of the way that they played with their hearts on their sleeve. I think that's what Berube's going to instill in these guys a little bit. And just a fan of the game, I like that hockey's headed a little bit back in that direction while combining the skill.
Nick, this kind of has Ovi and Dale Hunter vibes with this Berube change in Matthews. You,
Totally.
you disagree? Yeah, it kind of feels like that a little bit.
It does. It does. I'm weary of the Dale Hunter comparison, given how the Mark Hunter stint went in Toronto, but I do see the comparison there. And hey, since Matthews is a better goal scorer than Ovi, we might as well draw some comparisons.
Okay, settle down. But I think you make a great point that Leafs fans do really love that like old school style of hockey. I feel like anytime you talk to like a Leafs fan that you would call like a dad or a hockey dad, you just like start the timer and count down 15 seconds until the name Wendell Clark comes out of their mouth. So, out of the current players on this roster, who do you see really flourishing under that Berube system?
Yeah, one guy that I think I was super high on and kind of burst onto the scene a little bit in minimal capacity last year was Bobby McMahon. I think that's just a guy who works his butt off. And more than anything, when I say this kind of old school rough and tumble game, it's not going out there and beating the shit out of guys. It's not huge open ice hits like we saw in the 90s or the early 2000s. Just finishing every check. It's just being a pain on the forecheck. It's getting in a guy's face when he gets too close to your goalie. Like that's what hockey to me has always been. It doesn't have to be some slugfest at center ice, Reeves versus Rempy every night. That's entertaining as hell, absolutely. But to have team toughness to me is just a little bit more about if you're dumping it into the far right corner, your man's going to go finish his hit. I think Bobby McMahon is going to do that. And honestly, a guy that I fell in love with the second he came to Toronto, he got harped on a little bit. And then last year in playoffs kind of redeemed himself. Jake McCabe. I think Jake McCabe was phenomenal at times last year. I think Jake McCabe is going to play really well under this new coaching staff. And I think a guy that we're going to start seeing get some more praise, especially when OEL or some of these other guys they brought in can take a bit of the puck distribution off of McCabe's plate. That's not his specialty. Let him go out there, eat pucks, eat minutes, and just do his thing. I think he's going to flourish too.
I want to talk secondary scoring here in a minute, but just off vibes, speculation, anything that you might be hearing, what's going to happen with Mitch Marner?
Mitch Marner's going to play this season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody who's followed it the last month or two. I think, again, it was kind of the fan base reacting to the words of change from Brad Treliving that thought it was going to push him out the door. But if we go back a month or two to around the time his no trade clause kicked in early July, if you're Mitch Marner, why the hell would you want out of Toronto? You grew up there, all your friends live there. You're going into the final year of your deal. Your points are going up every year. The cap is going up every year. So either you stick around for one more year, give it a cup chance with your boys. He's freshly married, has a house in the city. Like he's going to love his time for that 1 year and then cash out elsewhere. Or he performs great. In both scenarios, he's going to perform well because that's what Mitch Marner does. He pushes towards 100 points. He's going to perform well and he's going to end up re-signing. And then why wouldn't you want to, right? So either way, I mean, whatever happens at the end of this year, I will always stand by. They should have dealt him before his no trade clause. They should have dealt him last year when they thought firing Kyle Dubas was the plug to pull. They should have traded Mitch Marner. The whole city was screaming it, but we're here. He's here. He's going to play for the team. He's going to finish somewhere in the 90s with his points, and then we'll see what happens come playoff times because, fellas, that's the only time of year that matters.
Amen, especially in Toronto, as we all know. My last question for you before we get some predictions for the season. What do you think about the depth on this team, the bottom six? I know you mentioned some concerns about secondary scoring earlier.
Man, I think that's the big concern, and I'm going to kind of spin off of that into a little bit of a rant on Nick Robertson here, so cut me off at any point. But guys, I'm so tired of guys with under 100 games demanding a trade. Like, who do you think you are? Since he came to the Toronto Maple Leafs, he has played, I believe it's 87 games across 4 seasons. So he's hardly played a full season. In that time, the team has lost Zach Hyman, Michael Bunting, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Alex Kerfoot from the left side. And he still hasn't found a way into the top six. Now you get a new coach in. Again, you lost Bertuzzi this year, so there's an opportunity for ice time. You have a new coach in. No matter what team you sign with in the league, you're only going to get a 1 year deal because you haven't proved anything more than that thus far. 30 odd points in 87 games. You're not getting anything more than that. So why don't you just want to play out 1 year, potentially on a wing with Austin Matthews or John Tavares, and put up the points that you can? And then, sure, if you don't want to be there, ask for a trade because now you're going to have the numbers to back it up. And now you proved you could play with ice time. I hate the fact that he doesn't look at this team and think that he has an opportunity. This might be the worst left wing corpse in the NHL. And he's looking at this and going, I'm not going to sign. No, I'm good. I'm going to ask for a trade somewhere else. Like, we're going to get a fourth round pick for that because he hasn't proved jack shit. So to go to secondary scoring, I think that tells you all you need to know right there. Matthew Nyes has played 83 career games. He slotted his left wing on line one. Bobby McMahon, who again, I like both of these guys. He's played under 80 career games. He's on line two. Line three, you got Pontus Holmberg, who's played just over 80 games, somewhere in the 90s, but not a point guy. And then line four, they got Connor Dewar, the veteran of the bunch, with 160, 180 odd games. And I don't think he could hit the wide side of a barn with a puck. Like, he's not going to score goals for you. So what they do, they go out and get Steven Lorentz today on a PTO. Steven Lorentz isn't going to score for you. He's played almost double the amount of any other left wing that I just named in the NHL, and he has 40 total points, half of those coming in one season on the desperate San Jose Sharks. So long-winded answer, Nick Robertson, figure it out. The Leafs got concerns with depth scoring. Yes, you can shift Domi around. Yes, you can shift Yarncroke around. Depth scoring is going to be real tricky. They're going to need Austin to be in the 60s, Willie in the 50s if they want to do what they did last year.
So the Nick Robertson thing to me has always been so interesting because I feel like what I've been hearing from Leafs fans or Leafs media for like 3 or 4 years now is heavy shot, don't worry, he's coming. It's almost like Game of Thrones with the dragons where they're like, don't worry, they're coming. And then you have to wait like 7 seasons for that to happen. So, him not breaking into the lineup, do you see that more as just like, hey, you just didn't cut it? Or was that something where coaching and GMs were like, we just don't like this player?
Maybe Keefe didn't like the fit with some other guys. And, obviously it's been a top heavy offense, so you can't really mix and match him with a Nylander or Matthews, maybe for defensive purposes, whatever you want to say. Maybe there wasn't a fit in the top six before. He's not really a bottom six guy because he's not going to finish checks. He's not going to kill penalties, anything like that. You need those roster spots. So to me, it's one of the classic age old. We know you can score in junior. Can you play in the NHL? It's not just about scoring. He's going to score. He has an amazing shot. He has the second best shot on the team behind Austin Matthews. That's not a question. He's a water bug with the puck. Can he stay healthy? And can he do anything other than score? Those are the two things that are going to get him in the lineup and keep him in the lineup. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that yet.
Wouldn't mind my guy Kyle Dubas maybe giving him a call, just saying. But
It's so annoying because wherever he goes, he's going to flourish. And then people will be like, oh, well, classic Leafs can't hang on to this guy, blah, 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 blah. Oh, my God.
so what do you think in this team is truly capable of this year? I personally think they're a playoff team. I want to hear your thoughts on that, and then how deep can they go?
I'd be stunned if they weren't a playoff team. I think you guys would agree with that. They're a good team. They've got a lot of firepower. They've improved the defense. I hate this narrative that the Leafs need better defense and that's why they don't win. Like, they can't score in the playoffs. That's why they don't win. They can't score in the playoffs. They've scored 3 goals, a maximum of 3 goals once in the past 2 series. You're not going to win in the playoffs if you can't score. So defense improved, and it wasn't the issue in the first place. So that's good. Going to need some depth scoring to get up there. To me, I think they're going to come second or third in the division. I don't see them running away with the division. I don't see them in a wild card spot. I think they're safely in the playoffs, but like we said, it's all going to come down to what happens in the playoffs. And for me, a lot of this season is going to ride on William Nylander. William Nylander is going to the first year of his extension. And if he performs at a point per game pace, which he's only eclipsed twice in his career, if he's 80 and 80 or 82 and 82, whatever we want to look at, that's not going to be good enough for the dollar amount that he's getting paid. The city's going to be on him. So can William Nylander be upwards of 100 points like he was last year? That's what they're going to need because of the lack of depth scoring. That's what he's going to need if he doesn't want to be every other headline in the city for the whole season. So to me, William Nylander is going to be the story this year as much as Mitch Marner's looming contract decisions.
You mentioned the stars not showing up in the postseason. In addition to Nylander, what are you looking for out of 34 and 16 when it comes to the postseason? Because it seems like those three, and then I guess you can lump Tavares in there too, just go right under the microscope the second that the playoffs start.
They do, but I mean, they should too, right? If you're going into a big sales meeting, you're not going to send your marketing guy and say, "Hey, get us this deal." You're going to send your firepower and you're going to say, "Get it done." So you do the same thing on the ice. Matthews needs to perform. frankly, he has. I don't think he's ever been a bad playoff performer. He's scored in big moments. He's performed at both ends. Last year, we know he was going through the concussion stuff and whatever else, and he still showed up when they needed him in a couple games. Obviously, wish we had him for the whole series. Same with Nylander. Marner, to me, it's the optics as much as anything. You know, those clips that went viral in the playoffs of him spinning off of a check and doing different things like that. Like I said, the city loves when we finish a check. I love when they finish a check. Everybody loves when they finish a check. But if you're 170 pounds soaking wet and you're going in on Charlie McAvoy and he already rimmed it the other way, do you really need to finish your check, or can you wait for the next shift when McMahon's out there against him, or Lorentz, who they just added, is out there against him and can get a lick in, right? So I don't hate those clips as much as the internet wants to run with them. To me, it's all going to be about the score sheet. Do they show up? Do they take over? Do they dominate? We know that they're both great defensive players. Got to see their names on the score sheet frequently and often in order for the Leafs to win more than a round.
Might be the most rational and mature Leaf season preview I think I've ever heard on the internet. That's pretty good.
I think that's a shot at my last couple of years coming on with you fellas, but no, man, I think everybody's excited, but like it's kind of like, how many times are we going to fall for the same song and dance? Like, you told us change was coming, change isn't here. I love Austin Matthews. I love William Nylander. I don't hate John Tavares near as much as other people do. I think switching the C's was the right thing to do. I think Morgan Riley's a great player. I think Jake McCabe's a great player. Love the Tanev addition, even though we won't worry about those later years yet. I like the goaltending enough. Like, it's going to be a matter of, do they show up when it matters the most? Because the team or the fan base loves this team. Time for them to prove it.
I love it. Nick, you got anything else?
We know that maybe a couple years ago it was the Metro. Now it seems like the Atlantic is just in this, arms race, for lack of a better word. Who out of the Atlantic or the East are you looking at maybe going into the postseason saying, I don't want any part of that team in the first or second round?
Probably just Florida. I mean, Boston for the Demons, but like, I don't feel like Boston got any better. They still don't have Swayman and they lost Allmark. So I don't know. I don't think Boston worries me. I don't think Boston worried me last year. Pasternak said on 32 Thoughts the other day that on paper, Toronto had the better team last year and they just won when it mattered, right? So I don't think Boston worries me. Tampa, I don't think worries me that much. I think Ottawa/Detroit are going to sneak and claw and crawl their way up there this year. I think that's going to be fun to watch. But I think really Florida's the cream of the crop, as they should be. That's the one that you don't want to get matched up with in round one and have another long season on the golf course.
So lastly, when we're, talking in June and the parade's already over, who did you guys beat in the Stanley Cup final?
For the Leafs to have won the Stanley Cup final, obviously won't be a Canadian team because God said no more than one Canadian team in the Stanley Cup final at one time. I'm going to go with the Dallas Stars. Picked them last year. I think I picked them the year before. Love Dallas's team. I think they're a great team. They're definitely going to miss Pavelski. Maybe they'll miss Hakanpää if he ends up suiting up with the Leafs. But I like the Dallas Stars. I think they're going to be right up back there again this year.
I like that pick.
Me too. I feel like they're due.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up for us here. Nick, thanks again, man. We always appreciate it. And I would say best of luck, but we've got some conflicting interests in terms of maybe the Caps trying to snag a wild card playoff spot here. So, average amount of luck. That's what I'll wish you guys.
Average amount of luck. That's all Austin Matthews will need to eclipse Ovechkin's scoring records.
I love it. Thanks, man.